Our next panel is the Wyoming is Open for Business panel. This ought to be of interest to any entrepreneurs out there, people interested in entrepreneurial activity. But we're going to try to discover how Wyoming is fostering a pro-business climate while expanding employment opportunities across our state. The panel highlights initiatives that support business growth, attract new enterprises, and connect talent to open positions, highlighting why Wyoming is an ideal place to work, invest, and thrive. Our panelists represent the breadth of Wyoming's business ecosystem. Baylie Evans is a GBeta Managing Director at Generator, where she runs the GBeta Wyoming Accelerator for startups seeking investment financing. She merges storytelling and venture capital experience to help founders achieve meaningful milestones. Braeden Davis serves as Client Experience Coordinator at the Business Studio at Laramie County Community College, collaborating directly with entrepreneurs and small business owners. A Wyoming native and UW graduate, he continues to support community-driven business development. And Matthew Fields, CEO of Plain Simple Technology, leads development of immersion-cooled micro data centers and AI infrastructure. With over 20 years of experience, he's committed to building rural AI talent through youth STEM programs. Please help me welcome our Wyoming is Open for Business panel.
We'll wing it. Hi, everybody. Good to see you all. Thanks for hanging with us for this session. As was introduced, thank you for that. My name is Baylie Evans. I work for a company called Generator. It's a venture capital company that works nationally across the country to provide accelerator programs and investments to early stage companies. So the GBeta Wyoming program operates here for the state of Wyoming, and we work with founders who are interested in exploring the venture capital path to growth. So the milestones, the metrics, the math, the language, how do you meet investors, how do you impress investors, and then we introduce you to a bunch of investors towards the end of the program as well. So we have an application deadline coming up on Sunday, so I'll pitch that if you're interested in the program, we have a table in that room down at the far end of the hall. I also brought some flyers and things here if you're interested. I'd love to chat with you about that. And that's all I wanted to say about GBeta, I guess. You want to talk about?
Yeah, and I can jump in next. My name is Braeden Davis, as I was introduced. I'm over at the Business Studio at LCCC. We're a new community resource. We work a lot with Generator and all of the state resources that are available to small businesses here in Wyoming. Our main goal is to be kind of that facilitator of whatever resource, or I guess whatever goal, obstacle, or whatever your business is experiencing. We want to be able to facilitate any interaction that you have with a resource here in Wyoming, and then also make sure that you don't get dropped after utilizing those resources, so you can continue to be successful and accomplish more than just one goal by going to one resource and having to hear by word of mouth what everything is available to you. So we kind of host that Rolodex of resources that are available. We have relationships with those resources that are available. We can provide warm handoffs to contacts at those resources, so your connection's easier. Like I said, that main goal is really just to make sure that you have a person on the back end being kind of your sidekick in your journey to growing your business and accomplishing your goals. We offer a ton of internal programs as well. We have trainings that we offer through the Outreach and Workforce Development department at LCCC, things like accounting, human resource management, those kind of things. If there are those business side things you don't know about as a business owner, because you're really good at the thing that you're doing in business, just not the business side. We also have access to like funding. We have tons of different resources, and we try to make sure that all of those resources that are also available in Wyoming are connected to each other, and there's a good communication line.
Hi, my name is Matt Fields, and I represent my company, but mostly I represent 4-H. So in Wyoming, we have historically had a mineral-based economy, and over time, essentially, a lot of that is slowly not growing as much as we should, and maybe not going to ever grow again to where we want it to be. So with 4-H, we've developed a STEM program teaching robotics, teaching different things like AI. And now, thanks to the Cardano Institute, we'll be starting to teach the blockchain and crypto part of things. One of the things that we looked at was that in the state, if you're creating top-down policies, it's great, it's important. And in Wyoming really has always had a kind of we're doing this thing first. But the thing that we looked at was if you're creating these top-down policies, it may not stick to much. So our view was we needed to create the bottom-up. And that was, we needed to go to the communities, we needed to go to the workforce that's coming in the future and start developing that so that we can actually have someone that would go to Baylie at GBeta or the University of Wyoming and Dr. Wright and others that are part of that. Also, we wanted to create the future startups, workforce, and companies that will ultimately be able to take and use the legislation that's being developed and has been developed and push that forward. So we currently work mostly out of Laramie County and out of Jackson, and we're taking and using those as distribution hubs in the state. So we've got currently about 13 out of Wyoming. I think it's 24 counties. And we're working in all those different counties to introduce STEM through 4-H. One of the things about Wyoming, we don't accept change always in the best way. We're very, we'll keep you at a distance, but we'll say hi to you. So we're using 4-H because that is accepted throughout the state of Wyoming. And we are using that to get into communities, rural communities. And we're finding that a lot of the kids in these communities are really bright, really smart, entrepreneurial. And so just getting them the knowledge, getting them the access is kind of what we're doing and pushing that forward through 4-H. We do have stuff that we are working with the University of Wyoming and at a larger part to help to create the effects within the state of Wyoming so that if you're a company looking at Wyoming, you will have a tech-ready workforce in the future. And there will be upskilling opportunities through the University of Wyoming, startup opportunities through like GBeta. And that's kind of what my passion is, kind of working with 4-H for the STEM in Wyoming and creating the or the bottom up approach. So thank you.
I have a question for the panel. In talking about the workforce and talking about resources, what's the biggest challenge that each of you have come across for entrepreneurs, for startups, blockchain businesses, trying to get the workforce, trying to get the funding that they need, government regulations? What's the challenges that you see they face?
I can go ahead and answer that first. I work with quite a few different types of companies and different stages of businesses and where they're at in their lifespan. And I think a commonality in pretty much every part of that is, like you mentioned, funding. It's a huge one. Being able to sustain so that way you can both stay alive and overcome things and then also move into the next stage of what you're trying to do. The other thing that we've seen a lot of is just that lack of knowledge and places to gain that knowledge of how to run a business, how to file your taxes, how to apply for grants. Because like I had mentioned earlier, a huge knowledge base, usually when somebody comes in that has a business or wants to start a business, even in the blockchain capacity, is you know how to do that really well and you're really good at it. And nobody's ever told you the roadblocks that you're going to face as you continue to move on. And there's a big ability to be discouraged when you hit those because where do I go find that information? How do I talk to somebody to get knowledge on this so that way I don't get a roadblock on something that's not even about my business? And we try to provide that kind of handhold through those things because that's where we've identified a need. But I'm sure Bailey's seen a lot of things too.
I've seen some things, yeah. I think you mentioned two of them. Workforce and funding are probably the hardest things you'll face in Wyoming. And my world is more in the funding side of things. So I think in Wyoming, there isn't a clear path on the high growth building a venture backable type of a company, because it just hasn't been done as frequently as a traditional, bank loan type of company. And so I think what I'm trying to do with GBeta, and I think others across the state are trying to do, is just sort of illuminate that path a little bit better, make it, have some success stories that have come. We do have a few, but, in Silicon Valley, for example, that's the path to growth. That's what they do. That's what's familiar. It's very well paved. They understand it. In Wyoming, not so much. So I hope that maybe, I don't think we'll ever become Silicon Valley level of that type of path, but it can be better worn with a few more journeys down that path. So that's what I kind of hope to accomplish in the next few years. And hopefully students are coming out of the university or anywhere else, LCCC, and seeing that there are programs and support for that type of a journey, in addition to, the more traditional small business type of path.
Good question, Pat. So what we see as one of the biggest issues of Wyoming, and I think we kind of already talked about this, is you don't know what you don't know. And being able to get to the point where you know that or can discover that information has always been a problem. What we're trying to do in Wyoming is set up different communications distribution channels of ways that groups, communities, people can communicate and know about information. One example in Cheyenne, with the Technology Advisory Council, we've started setting up basically fireside chats, and we're working to distribute those throughout to different Wyoming communities. We just did one last week with Steve Lupian on the stable token, and we'll have that one distributed here shortly. With our robotics students, we're also creating different groups like Discord servers. We're introducing families to different organizations like Cyber Wyoming, different ways to learn about things and try to create that. I know there's other projects. I know that Christian Beatsos, he's a part of Uplink Robotics. He's actually a startup out of the University of Wyoming. He has an AI system that he's basically getting and creating information to allow the state and anyone that comes in the state to discover where stuff is at. So there's multiple different efforts that are being brought in, but communication, I think, has always been our most difficult thing. You don't know what you don't know.
Like mentioning anything, do you know? The state, Wyoming Business Council, and I think there's a few partners in there, have created this WyoBizLink resource as well. I think it's just Google WyoBizLink, and it's a resource where all of the resources available in the state are available to be searched through that site. So if you're wondering where to start, that might be a good place.
Matt, this is a question that anybody can answer as well, but when you've been involved in startups and helping startups, what do you see as the block that they may hit, the wall that they may hit before they can become successful, or they end up fail?
That's a good question too, Pat. And yes, I've been a part of several startups in Wyoming. First off, Wyoming has always been welcoming. When we first came to Wyoming, we did crypto mining, and we were able to reach out directly to several of the members of the Senate directly. They called us right back, they texted us, etc., which was incredibly helpful. What we ran into beyond that was we missed information. We didn't know about stuff. We didn't know who to ask. And that's kind of you don't know what you don't know. And we ran into that a lot. The other thing too we ran into was when we got past the front, which is kind of the blockchain and the legislative body, there wasn't much structure below that in the state of Wyoming. And we've struggled with that from a financing perspective, from who do I reach out to for this, who's handling this. It's been pretty difficult. And then the second thing we ran into was a workforce issue, which was where I started the program with 4-H, because we needed to address that in Wyoming. We couldn't find anyone. We had to import people. When we tried to import them, there wasn't like community resources that were interesting or attractive, and they ended up going to like Fort Collins or doing remote work. So those are the two biggest things I see for startups is lack of structure below the front that we're putting up with the legislative body and things that we're passing, and then the workforce development, which is in development and being moved forward. I think that's the biggest thing I see right now.
Same question.
What do you see it? Yeah, because how many businesses have gone through GBeta?
Yeah. Let's see. So with our next cohort, we'll be at 50 companies over the last 5 years have come through the GBeta program. And yeah, a lot of the same. So workforce and funding and finding, I think, a lot of the things that Braeden does and a lot of the Wyoming BizLink type of things, like how do I take the next step? There's a lot of, I think if anyone's tried to start a business in Wyoming, the feedback I hear a lot is we get passed around, like from person to person. And I think that's what Braden's group is trying to sort of solve. And there's sometimes a lack of expertise on real specific niche questions. International licensing is one that came up recently. This founder could not find anyone in Wyoming that could support or understand international licensing very well. So he had to go find someone in Colorado to help with that. So some of those really like niche questions. If anyone knows anything about international licensing, by the way, let me know. I'll introduce you.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of what Baylie had said, I think that being passed around is inevitable because it's a good thing, because not everybody has all the answers. And if you find somebody who you think has all the answers or says they have all the answers, they're lying to you. So that's why we're trying to both acknowledge that and then also solve it by saying we can be there on the back end. We're kind of a master of none, but we know the people who can answer this question. And if we don't know the people who answer this question, we can go find them, similar to how Bailey's right now asking for some information. Like that's what we try to do too, is approach different resources, approach different people, and get out of our comfort zone, go find the people who may not even be part of an entrepreneurial network, to make that connection to enhance the wider community of it all.
So not to be negative, because you're just explaining things, but there really are a lot of resources in the state, top down, from the Wyoming Business Council down to the local economic development associations, to the chamber, to your organizations. And I think one of the things is, how do you help people navigate through all of that?
Yeah. I think there's a ton of different ways to help people navigate, and it is a person by person basis. There's no real, I know this is a non-answer, but it's my answer. There are a million different ways to connect people with things that can help them, and a million different ways for people to interact with those things, and really finding what each entrepreneur and how they communicate, how they interact with resources, and actually getting to the root of what your problem is on the front end. So that way, when you actually make connections and actually talk to people, you're at the right place, you're communicating in the way that works for you and for them, and you know what your goal is. So really focusing down what your problem is and how you're planning on solving it to create a path to go solve those problems, I think is that answer of how to make those connections reliable, useful, and efficient.
Yeah, what he said.
I would agree to some extent on that. What I've found in the startup scene and with many others is that we end up creating our own networks. And if you're lucky enough, you will meet one of us and we'll introduce you to whoever you need in different areas. And the international law, legal piece, that is an issue we're finding in Wyoming, finding legal help with that. I would say that we need to do better. And what I found a lot of times is that the University of Wyoming, Wyoming Business Council, they have resources that exist, but again, it's kind of, it feels like a front. You get to there, you learn a little bit, but it's not enough and not what you actually need. And that's when you need to find someone that can actually point you to the network. And I think we need to fix that in Wyoming, because if you're a company or a startup in Wyoming, if you run to basically a brick wall with any of these situations, it can stop you dead cold in your startup or in operating your business. And so Baylie knows a lot of people. I know a lot of people. Braeden, I'm sure you know a lot of people that are growing and stuff, but really, Wyoming does need to do better at this.
So do you think that, the audience here, part of the solution is helping create those networks because they have all the knowledge grouped together that can really move things forward for everyone?
Yeah, and I think all of our goal is to make our network your network and to make our network useful for you so that way you're getting the right connections. Because at the end of the day, everything is about who you know, whether that's good or bad. That's what life is about, and that's what business is about too. So if we can help you know the right people, that's, I think, the goal for everyone.
Matt, a question for you and also for everybody on the panel is, we're here for the blockchain stampede, but the center that promotes this event is the Center of Blockchain and Digital Innovation, which encompasses a lot of different things. And so it's just not blockchain in isolation. Blockchain connects to a lot of different technologies, and the opportunity is there, from your own experience to see how you can connect those things together for a startup, for expanding businesses.
Yeah, and I do also believe that, I mean, yes, I'm here in a general capacity, I guess. But it is important to acknowledge that every business can connect to every other business in some way, and connections are a general art. So in some way, everybody connects. And that's what I think we need to understand in this realm is if you can connect with somebody, even if they're not doing what you're doing, it may be beneficial.
And Matt, what's been your experience?
I found the network. I found it somewhat difficult ultimately to get things through. There are certain things that exist. The Center for Blockchain and Innovation. It exists, and you can get some information and work with it. And I love working with Steve Lupian, but we've oftentimes found that unless it's, and I'll be frank, unless it's made by the University of Wyoming, sometimes the University of Wyoming won't deal well with other organizations or can't flex to make that happen. And oftentimes we've had to go outside of the circle of University of Wyoming to make things happen. So I would love to see a greater partnership, both at a legislative level, at the University of Wyoming level, and basically everyone working together to move things forward, because we do have a ton of innovation in the state. We do have a ton of startups, and I would love to see that move forward. And we need to truly turn it into the Center for Innovation and Blockchain so that we can actually start sending people in to it and helping them to move forward.
One of the reasons I'm asking these questions is later today, we're going to have a session where panelists, audience members, everybody who's here can interact and talk about ideas for the future. How can we make things better in this space for people who want to start blockchain-based businesses, related innovative technology businesses, expand existing technology business, bring in new ideas that are being developed not only at the university but within everybody here who's involved in the industry. So just try to encourage people to think along those lines, because there'll be an opportunity to kind of write up what on a whiteboard type of idea is what's going to be all be recorded. We'll take it in and provide that information to the powers that be from the people themselves who are involved in all of this. And I think that's important to hear from those who are not only contributing to what we're trying to do in this state of Wyoming, but also want to help others make those kind of contributions as well. So I just hope that everybody thinks about some of these things in the back of their minds while they're eating lunch, and be ready later today to discuss these things. And again, to remind everybody, there are a couple of vendors down in the East Ballroom, including G-Beta, and we have keep calling
The business studio.
studio. That's
You're
right.
good.
If you want to call it center, and we have the tax network people there to answer a lot of great questions you may have because of the changing laws and situations involving digital assets. And I can't make heads or tails of how to report on all of this stuff, so maybe they can help you. Any other questions for the panel? If not, we'll let everybody go, kind of get ready for lunch here in a little bit. I'll turn everything over to Cam here. Go ahead.
I wanted to make maybe one more comment. If y'all are thinking of questions, happy to try to answer. We talked quite a lot about what's hard about starting or what the problems are about having a business in Wyoming. But there's a lot of benefits too. I mean, a lot of you already know those, the tax benefits, of course. But if you're building, in my world, if you're building a high growth, I don't need a lot of people, I just need a lot of software type of a company. Wyoming can be really great for that kind of a thing. You don't need a lot of, space or big, I don't know, complicated equipment or anything like that. You need a laptop and, access to the internet. And Wyoming, I think, can be really great for building that type of company. So, I don't know. I guess I wanted to end on a positive note. I think Wyoming is a great place to build a company. And yeah, we've got some challenges. I think everywhere has challenges. But if you're a maverick looking to build a company out of Wyoming, you're going to get a lot of grit out of doing it. And you're probably going to be, ready to launch.